you see, we can leave this promise buried in the Bible. We can leave this promise buried in the ground. We can pray it glibly every so often at a prayer meeting. Or we can go before the Father day and night and say, God, you said, ask of us. Ask of you. You'll give us the nation as our inheritance. We can be as the importunate widow. We can be as the man, the Syrophoenician woman who went before him and would not let go until she got what she wanted for her daughter. We need to be like that with this promise. We need to take it before God and say, God, this is what you said in your word. This is what you said in your word. A city lies in ruins. A city lies in bondage. We have people outside our door. People are in bondage. Gangs running high schools and people getting stabbed and killed. We have drunks running. The devil is running the neighborhood. You can walk down the road and see drunks stumbling at night. You have corruption everywhere. You have fathers that have never have seen their children in years. When is it going to stop? When is it going to stop? Who is going to stand in the gap? Jesus said, or God said in the Old Testament, he said to Ezekiel, I sought for a man who would stand in the gap, that I might not destroy the city. I sought for a man to stand in the gap. But we never follow that verse, because the next verse says, I did not find a man, so I destroyed the city. Who will stand in the gap in this city? God is calling us. God is calling us to cry out to him for a city. God is calling us. He said, ask of me. Ask of me. Ask of me. Ask of me. He's telling us to plead our case before him. He's telling us to care about him. He said, ask of me. Don't stop asking until the powers of darkness over the nations have been broken. Don't stop asking until the powers of darkness over the city have been broken. Don't stop asking until the streets are filled with dancing and people are filled with the knowledge of the glory of God. That's when you can start asking. As long as they're out there and as long as they're unsaved, it's time to care about them. It's time to care about them. It's time to ask God for them. Don't stop asking until the hearts of the fathers have been turned to the children. I got up this morning. You know I hardly sleep at night through the night anymore because of my shoulders. So I got up. It was almost 4 o'clock. I went to the chair. I said, let me turn on the TV for a second. I turned the TV on. And it was a show on. I ended up watching it for a half hour. You know, George, I've always been stunned about why men abuse their wives. I don't get it. I don't get it because if you abuse her, she's not going to come back loving you. You got to be a numbskull. So Linda just done that. When Ed beats you. When Ed beats you, do you feel good about it? Men abuse their wives for stupidity because they're not going to come back to loving them. I smack my wife around. Very often. She's not going to come back loving me. The stupidity of it, it works opposite. Why are you doing something like that? Why do men do things like that? And I sit there and then they were going into the women, how they stay in these situations. They think there's something wrong with them. This one woman, and she escaped from it, thank God. She lived on her farm. Her husband was a farmer. She opened the blinds. He walked in the house and said, how come you have the blinds open? She said, I want to let the sun in. He says, no, you didn't. You're lusting over my workers. She said, I'm not lusting over your workers. He proceeded to beat her. Throws her around on the ground, kicks her, steps on her hands till he breaks her hands and walks out the door. Before he walks out the door, he says to her, now go take a shower. Because I'm going to come back and I'm going to kill you. Before I kill you, I want you to be clean. You know what she started to do after he left? She turned on the shower. And as she turned it on, something came over and she said, what am I doing? I'm taking the shower so he can come back and kill me? And she went And she ran and she found a ditch, and she was hiding in the ditch so she can get away to the home the night before. She said the snakes were crawling around her in the ditch. And so finally she got away, and she was able to get help, and she got away from it.
Hallelujah.
Amen.
Do you know how many people outside our doors are abused? I got news for you. There's no program that's going to change it. Maybe it'll help a little bit here, a little bit there. But it will change when God finds a people that will cry out to Him day and night for the slain of His people and say, God, you said in your word, this is your word. Ask of me, and I will give you the nations as your inheritance. Folks, it's time. I know it in my heart. It's time. If we could do it right now, I would set up round-the-clock prayer for this city. I would set up this church. We don't have the ability yet, but we're going to push towards it. So 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, there's somebody praying for this city. We're going to do this because it's time for God to get hold of a people. And I believe it's us who will stand like He says in the Old Testament, who will watchmen on the walls, who will cry out to me day and night and give me no rest, who weary me with their coming until I pour out on them. That's what God's looking for.
Amen.
We sang this song before. Beth told us she didn't know what was in my message. Beth, you could come to the piano. It's a song I can only imagine. It goes like this. I can only imagine what it'll be like when I walk by your side. I can only imagine what my eyes will see when your face is before me. I can only imagine. I can only imagine when that day comes and I find myself standing in the sun. I can only imagine. When all I will do is forever worship you. I can only imagine. I can only imagine. The chorus says, surrounded by your glory, with will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus, or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence, or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine. I can only imagine. That is a wonderful song. That is a wonderful song. But I was preparing this, something came into my mind, and I had a picture. It was just a little bit different than this. And we're in heaven, and each one of us is in heaven. We're standing before the Lord, and there's the shouts and the accolades. Only thing, it was as if each one of us was standing before a small section of crowd. It was in a stadium. Say this was a stadium or a section of the stadium. And I was standing before, and behind me were all these people. And they were right behind me, and there were all these people, and these seats were filled. And I looked and I said, Lord, what are these people? What are these seats? And then I noticed something. I said, how come? How come there's seats that are empty? And the Lord said to me, those standing behind you are your inheritance. Those are the ones you prayed for. Because you prayed for, brought them here with you. And then I turned and I said to the Lord, what about the empty seats? He said, those are the ones you were supposed to pray for, and you never did. I reserved the seat, but they're not here. When you stand before God, and I stand before God, will the seats be filled, or will they be empty? The choice is ours. The choice is ours. Let's bow our heads.